Hey guys, this is Illusion PODFIC, and today we're going to be reading Insane or Not Insane. That is the question by Alright, What's All This Then? This is Chapter 4. You're a doctor? Stephanie's voice rang through the manor's drawing room, half skeptical, half amused. Jason, leaning back against the edge of the grand piano, crossed his arms. A psychiatrist. So you got, a doctor in psychology? No. He tilted his head, slow and deliberate. I went to med school and then specialized in psychiatry, forensics specifically. So, you're like a psychologist for criminals? A psychiatrist. What's the difference? Jason sighed. He knew he would regret agreeing to this. He hadn't meant to do this yet, not the sitting down with the family part. Jason had planned on avoiding them longer, if he could help it. Weeks, maybe even months, years ideally. The gala had been a calculated risk, a necessary evil, a way to re-enter Gotham's orbit with just enough distance, just enough polish that they wouldn't recognize the burn marks beneath the suit. He hadn't expected Tem, and he hadn't expected Dick to track him down the very next day. But, of course he had. Jason should have known better. He just stepped out of a coffee shop near Midtown, one hand in his coat pocket, the other holding a cup he hadn't even had time to sip from when he heard it. Jason! Not a question, not a greeting, just a statement, flat and certain. Jason turned, already knowing who it was. Dick stood 10 feet away, arms folded, expression unreadable. Civilian clothes, but everything about him screamed Nightwing on a mission. This wasn't a coincidence. Dick had sought him out, hunted him down, more like. Jason wouldn't be surprised if there'd been traffic cams involved. Maybe facial recognition? The bastard always did his homework. Jason hadn't needed to ask how he'd found him. The headlines had been everywhere. Oxford-trained psychiatrist joins Joker legal proceedings. The press didn't really know who he was, but the bats? They'd know his writing, his posture, his face. The name had just been a breadcrumb. He hadn't run, hadn't barked something snide and disappeared into the crowd. Just met Dick's gaze and muttered, "Let's get this over with." Dick hadn't smiled, just jerked his head towards the street like the matter was already settled. Manor. Tonight. And that was that. And now, here he was. Back in the manor. Every bat staring at him like he was still 17 and bleeding. Still the problem child. He'd always known this confrontation would come. You didn't show up in Gotham's headlines with the words Joker and psychiatrist in the same sentence and expect to be left alone. But still, he'd hoped for more time. A few quiet days, a softer start. Instead, it was all happening now, all at once. "How is that even possible?" Barbara asked, eyes narrowed, arms crossed. "You're, 25? You've been gone 8 years. That's barely enough time for med school, let alone a specialization." Jason shrugged, though the movement was tight, more defense mechanism than nonchalance. "I got into Oxford at 17, full scholarship. Took accelerated tracks, doubled up coursework, tested out of prerequisites. I published a few papers earlier that caught attention, so I got clearance for direct clinical exposure sooner than usual. Did fieldwork across Europe, worked under some of the top names in forensic psych." "Because of course you did," Dick muttered, shaking his head. Jason raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. He gestured to Tim. "Rebuilt half of Wayne Enterprises' digital infrastructure before he could vote." He looked at Damien. Spoke 6 languages and played 5 instruments before the age of 12. He turned to look Dick in the eye. "Youngest police chief in the world." Dick blinked. Okay, point. Although he had always been the more academically inclined out of everyone, Jason could understand their surprise. Most vigilantes didn't just walk away from the nightlife to pursue a normal career. But just because they did it, doesn't mean it was easy. It certainly hadn't been easy for him. He remembered his first day of med school, when his nerves had almost ended his medical career before it could even start. He was 20 minutes early and still felt late. Jason crossed the quad with his shoulders hunched against the drizzle, his backpack digging into one shoulder. The weather in Oxford was what Alfred would politely call bracing. Jason would call it soggy disappointment. The cobblestones were slick, and his map was starting to disintegrate in his hands, ink bleeding across the folds like an abstract painting of confusion. Blue buildings near the Radcliffe camera. Turn left at the stupid lion statue. Not that lion statue, the other lion. He swore softly under his breath and finally found the right building. Stone, ivy-covered, and older than most Gotham crime families combined. The door creaked like it'd been waiting centuries to make that sound. Inside smelled like paper and stress. His first lecture was on neuroanatomy. The hall was massive, tiers of wooden seats rising like an arena. The kind meant for blood sport or final exams. Students were trickling in, selling into seats with mugs of takeaway coffee, and that practiced brand of aloof confidence Jason associated with private education. He picked a spot in the middle, not too close, not too far, just enough to see the board without being seen. A professor, a wiry man with mad scientist hair and a dry Scottish accent, began the lecture with, "Now, if you can't find the medulla oblongata on your own skull, please leave. You're lost." Someone laughed. Jason didn't. He took notes, not because he had to. He'd already read the book cover to cover last week, but because it gave his hands something to do. Something normal. Something quiet. By the second lecture, he'd memorized 3 escape routes from the building and diagnosed the guy 2 rows down with untreated OCD. He didn't mean to. It was just there. Hyper-awareness that never turned off. The product of training, trauma. A brain that never stopped dissecting what it saw. "Hey," someone said beside him. Jason blinked. The girl, brown curls, nose ring, accent somewhere between London and Bristol, smiled at him like they'd been lab partners for years. "You're American, right?" Jason glanced down at his hoodie. Gotham Knights, 12-0. "Guilty. I'm Claire. Claire Morgan. You?" "Jason." "Cool. You staying on campus?" "No. You commuting?" "Kind of." He didn't elaborate. She didn't push. They walked to the next lecture together, then lunch, then afternoon lab. Somewhere between identifying a cross-section of a spinal cord and arguing about serotonin pathways, Jason realized his palms weren't sweating anymore. He was still on edge, but less. His heart hadn't tried to crawl out of his throat since lunch. Progress. Claire introduced him to her friend, Noah, who was tall, soft-spoken, and wore sweaters like a walking hug. By the end of the day, they'd added Jason to the group chat and invited him for drinks. He declined. "Thanks, but I've got to think. Maybe next time." He didn't tell them the thing was lying alone in his off-campus flat in a one-bedroom walk-up that smelled like lemon cleaner and cold tile. He had picked it for the heavy locks and the fact that no one shared a wall. That no one could hear him scream. That night, like every night, the nightmares came. Lazarus-flavored, teeth-sharp and gut-deep. But when Jason woke up, drenched in sweat, fists clenched in the sheets, there was something else too. A memory, quieter than the rest, of Claire laughing, of Noah gently correcting the professor, of the warm thrum in his chest when he answered the question right and no one flinched at the sound of his voice. He lied back down and stared at the ceiling until the dawn light crawled in. Maybe, he thought, he could work with this. Maybe. "I can't believe you're like an actual medical doctor," Stephanie said. "Sure am. Did my surgical rotations, emotional breakdowns, and dramatic hallway monologues. Very Grey's Anatomy of me." Alfred cut in before anyone else could hound him further. "I, for one, am very proud of you, Master Jason, for choosing a career that doesn't involve rooftop brawls, questionable leather, or jumping off moving trains." The others, even Bruce, grimaced. Jason preened. "Glad someone appreciates the career pivot," he said, and reached into the sleek leather folder he'd carried in under one arm, more out of habit than necessity. He drew out a certificate, thick paper, embossed gold seal, and held it out to Alfred. "For you," Jason said, almost casually. "Promised you I'd get a degree one day. Figured you might want the proof to hang next to all the school photos that mysteriously stopped after I hit puberty." Alfred took the parchment with reverence that bordered on ceremony. His fingers brushed the edges gently, tracing the letters. "Doctor of Medicine," he read aloud, voice low. "Oxford University. Honors distinction." He looked up then, eyes glassy in a way that made Jason immediately want to look away, or make a joke, or throw something, but he didn't. He held Alfred's gaze. "You kept your promise," the butler said quietly. Jason cleared his throat. "Yeah, well, you kept all of mine." He meant the promises he'd made to Alfred long ago. The ones he hadn't always kept himself. Promises to try, to come back, to build something better. Alfred had held on to those hopes when Jason wasn't sure he could. Alfred never stopped believing in him, even when he stopped believing in himself. The butler gave him a nod that said more than words could have, and stepped away, already scanning the room for an appropriate wall to mount the certificate, though Jason was pretty sure it would end up in the study, framed and subtly dusted once a week for the next 20 years. And if you want photo evidence too, Jason added after a beat, reaching into his coat pocket. I came prepared. He pulled out a slim, worn photo sleeve, one of those plastic accordion folders that could fit in a briefcase. It bulged with years of compressed time. I figured you'd want proof. I didn't just Photoshop my way through Europe. He tossed the bundle onto the coffee table with a muted thud. Damien leaned forward immediately, curious. Cass followed slightly. Tim held back, arms crossed. Steph, unsurprisingly, was already flipping through them before anyone else had processed that she'd moved. There were photos of lecture halls, of Jason at lab tables, nose deep in notes, highlighters in every color bleeding into worn pages. One of him asleep with his cheek smushed against a textbook titled Neurocognitive Responses to Complex Trauma. Another of a pub night with classmates, people laughing, drinks raised, Jason mid-eyebrow in the background. A selfie with Corey and Roy, all three of them grinning like idiots at the base of Arthur's seat. One of him standing proudly in front of a hospital building in Germany, ID badge clipped to his coat, looking uncharacteristically earnest. Then Steph's hand paused on a photo towards the back. Graduation day, the first one. Jason in robes, a real smile tugging at the edge of his mouth, cap tilted slightly askew. Is that... Damien's voice cut through the silence. My mother? Jason leaned forward, peering at the photo. Yeah, Talia flew in. She didn't stay long, but she came to the ceremony, helped me get into med school, actually. She pulled a lot of strings, paid my rent the first year. Would have flunked out without her. Silence descended again, this time heavier. She never told me, Damien said, his voice tight and betrayed around the edges. She doesn't tell anyone anything, Jason said. Welcome to the club. There was a pause, then Barbara shifted slightly in her chair. You look happy in some of these. Jason blinked. Yeah, I guess I was. And he had been, for pieces of it, moments, not always, but enough. Alfred took the photo from Steph's hand delicately and looked down at it, then at Jason. I will find a frame for this one as well, he said. Jason smiled, tight-lipped, a little crooked. Figured you would. It was the quietest moment of the night, the calm before the argument, before the storm, but for now, the past was spread out before them in worn photos and a single gold-embossed paper. He'd almost allowed himself to enjoy it, the hush of awe, the flicker of recognition in their eyes, the softening that came with realizing he hadn't just disappeared to rot or rage, but he had built something real, something meaningful. Then the silence broke, not with a bang, but with the scrape of a chair against hardwood. It echoed more than it should have, sharp against the hush of Wayne Manor's drawing room, sunlight bleeding in pale strips across the carpet, the clock on the wall ticking louder than usual. Dick leaned forward, forearms on his knees, fingers laced. There was a careful stillness to him, like a coiled spring trying to pretend it wasn't under tension. So, he said, voice neutral. Too neutral. The Joker case. Jason didn't flinch, didn't blink. He'd expected this. Hell, he'd rehearsed it more than once. In the mirror of some sterile hotel bathroom. Yeah. What's your role in the trial exactly? Barbara asked. Sharp, but measured. Because the news reports are vague, and there's a lot of speculation. Some think you're leading the evaluation team. Jason's shoulders tensed despite himself, just slightly. He made himself breathe. I am, he said. I'm the primary forensic psychiatrist overseeing the Joker's mental state assessment. He heard the breath catch. Steph, before she even spoke. You can't be serious, Steph said, incredulous. As serious as a heart attack, Jason replied, and I'm a doctor, so I know how serious those are. The attempt at humor landed flat. He knew it would. Still, he needed to say it to sound human, grounded, normal. You really think this is a good idea? She said, putting him on trial like he's just some criminal? He is a criminal, Tim said quietly. That's kind of the point. Oh, come on, Steph said. He's literally a mass-murdering psychopath. What's there to prove? That's not how the justice system works, Jason said evenly. He kept his hands folded in his lap, fingers flexed once, then stilling. You don't get to skip steps just because the outcome feels obvious. Wait, you're evaluating him? Dick cut in, already sounding incredulous. Are you out of your mind? Jason stayed leaning against the piano, face impassive, posture relaxed. He looked relaxed anyway. Inside, everything was heat and glass, but his voice is cool. I'm doing my job. I've been asked to consult as an expert in forensic psychiatry. I didn't assign myself the case. Jason, Bruce said, low and tight. That tone. The same one he used right before pulling rank in the field. You of all people shouldn't be anywhere near this. Jason blinked slowly. Why? Because I've studied the Joker more than most of my peers? Because I've seen what he does up close? Because it's you, Bruce said, rising slightly from his seat. Shadows pulled under his eyes. You can't be objective. You're not just a doctor in this. I am a doctor in this, Jason snapped. That's exactly what I am. That's what the court sees. I've worked too damn hard to get here to let you reduce it to some kind of vendetta. But it is personal, Steph said. Come on, Jason, it's him. He killed you. Yeah, he said. He did. And I came back. I healed, I studied, I trained. I learned how to do this right. You think I'm the only person in forensics who's been shaped by violence, who's been broken by it? The air shifted, thickened. His voice didn't rise, but it darkened, hardened. Yes, the Joker and I have history, but do you honestly think he's the only monster I've ever had to look in the eye? He pushed away from the piano then, not with aggression, but inevitability. He took a slow step forward, jaw tight. I've sat across from a man in Marseille who strangled 17 people and sent their teeth to their families. I've interviewed war criminals in Hague, listened to a child trafficker in Warsaw justify his system like he was talking supply chains. I've studied spree killers, arsonists, sadists. You think I wasn't angry then? That their crime didn't fill me with rage? That I didn't sit somewhere and think, maybe the world would be better off without them? His gaze moved to Bruce, then Dick. Not accusing, just tired, bone deep. But that's not the job. The job is to understand, to assess, to do it right. Even when it's hard, even when it hurts. That's what justice is. Not vengeance, not control. He paused. Not whatever the hell this is. Bruce made a sound, a low, dismissive exhale. His tell, a tick Jason knew too well. And suddenly you care about procedure? That one, Jason felt in his ribs. He gave Bruce a slow, flat look. I do now, he said, because I understand it. Because I've spent the last 8 years learning how it's supposed to work, and how it should work even in a place like Gotham. A robin chirped outside the tall window. Jason looked at it without seeing, barely noticing the bright flick of wings as it hopped along the sill. Funny. Even the birds didn't seem to want to stay here long. Bruce folded his arms. And yet, you insert yourself into the Joker's trial, of all cases. I didn't insert myself into anything, Jason replied. I was brought in by an external team. I didn't seek this out. You didn't decline either, Barbara said. Her voice wasn't accusing, but tired, sad. That one cut deeper than he wanted it to. He didn't blame her. Gordon would catch fallout. He already did. You knew what it would mean. Jason's mouth tightened. I knew it would cause a stir, yeah. I also knew that if the Joker is ever going to be tried, really tried, it's going to need to be done right, with experts, with structure, not just a guy in a cape making judgment calls in a cave. Bruce's eyes narrowed. Jason continued, You want to talk about motives? Fine. Maybe it's selfish. Maybe I wanted to look him in the eye again. But that doesn't mean I'm not doing my job. I am qualified to do this. And for the record, I'm not doing it alone. I'm part of a team. There are checks, balances, oversight. He's not just another case, Dick cut in. He's not a white-collar embezzler or some guy who robbed a bank. He's chaos. You know better than anyone. Jason gave him a slow blink. Which is why we need procedure. If the Joker's ever going to be dealt with legally, it has to go through the system properly, thoroughly. Otherwise, what? You keep locking him up in Arkham just to let him escape again? And your solution is a court of law. Dick's voice sharpened. Jason, come on. You think a jury can understand what he is? that some psychiatrist, even a brilliant one I'm sure, can crack that mind? I'm not trying to crack it, Jason said. I'm trying to determine whether he's legally sane enough to be held accountable for what he's done. Bruce's voice was low, steady, and cold. And who do you think knows the Joker better than I do? There it was. Jason tilted his head, studying Bruce like a specimen. There it is, the Batman knows best speech. Go on. I'm sure you've got the whole script memorized. Bruce didn't rise to it. You forget, he said. I've spent 2 decades tracking his every move, every kill. I know the patterns, I know the triggers. The rest of the world only sees the body count. I have lived in his shadow. And what has that shadow done for you? Jason asked. Made you think you're the only one who gets to decide what justice looks like? Bruce's mouth thinned. You're working with the GCPD, Jason. You know they're not prepared to handle him. Arkham can't hold him. The courts don't understand him. The only reason he hasn't reduced the city to ash is because of us. No, Jason snapped. Because of you. Because you decided that your personal crusade trumps everything else. Even now you're not worried about the Joker. You're worried about losing control. 8 years ago, this is where the conversation would have escalated into a physical altercation. At least between Batman and the Red Hood. But Jason wasn't that person anymore, so he forced himself to take a step back. What's your endgame here? Damien asked suddenly, his arms crossed, leaning against the mantel like a gargoyle carved from tension. You want the Joker locked up? That's happened before. It never lasts. I want him to be evaluated properly, Jason replied. I want the legal process followed for once, not some half-baked Arkham return cycle that leads nowhere. The man's done enough damage. It's time the system is forced to own it. And if he's ruled insane, so be it. But if he's sane, he's not, Dick said, rising now, his voice loud. You know he's not. I mean, how could you even think? Legally insane is not the same as acts like a maniac, Dick, Jason cut in. There's a definition, criteria. The McNaughton's rule, the Dusky standard. This isn't about what you think is obvious. I don't care about your textbooks, Dick bit back. We've been dealing with this psycho for years, and you think the law is going to stop him? That is not the point, Tim said, quietly but firmly. It's not supposed to be about what best works. It's about what's right. If we believe in the justice system at all, then we have to use it. Otherwise, we're just making it up as we go. Barbara frowned, clearly conflicted. Jason could see the gears turning, the weight of her father's badge in her silence. That's fine until it involves your family, she mutters. My dad might lose his badge over this. Do you know what they're saying? That the cops took shortcuts, that there was bias. There was bias, Jason said. He hated the way she looked at him. Like someone who had trusted him and now wasn't sure if she still could. Look, I'm not here to dismantle the GCPD. I'm here to do one thing. Assess the mental state of a man whose crimes have shaped this city. If he's truly insane, then it will be documented and he'll probably be sent right back to Arkham. But if not, he'll stand trial and face sentencing like any other criminal. You think this'll fix Gotham? Damien sneered. You think the Joker will finally get what's coming to him because you file some report? No, Jason said, jaw tight. But I think the people might. The families, the victims. They deserve to know the truth, and they deserve a system that follows the damn rules. Steph exhaled. I just don't get why the proper procedures weren't followed before. Wouldn't the outcome have been the same? That's the point, Jason said. If the outcome is the same, then what are you afraid of? Bruce's jaw tensed. Jason seized on it. He took a breath, slow, deliberate. The kind you take right before you throw a punch or walk away from one. What exactly are you afraid of, Bruce? He said, cutting through the static of moral superiority humming in the room. That I'll have access to him? That I'll be alone in a room with him? Because I won't be. I'm part of a licensed team. A team you can look into if it makes you sleep better at night. But I won't be handling the Joker's evaluation on my own. He let his gaze sweep the room. Even if this goes to a jury trial, all we're doing is providing expert testimony. That's it. A professional opinion. We don't make the decisions or give out sentences. If it's a bench trial, the judge decides. Not me, not my team. And that's not something I'm looking to change. I'm not here to tip the scales. I'm here to do the job I was trained for. Jason stepped forward, tone steady but laced with warning now. If you're so sure you've been right all these years, if you're convinced everything you've done has been justified, then what are you so worried about? Let it go through the system. Let it be scrutinized. If you're right, then the outcome won't change. His eyes narrowed. But maybe that's the problem. You expect us to believe you can be impartial? Dick asked, laughing bitterly. After everything? Jason turned to face him fully now. The mask cracked. What is it you think I'm going to do, Dick? He asked, voice dark. Poison him? Slip a scalpel into my coat pocket and finish what you all never could? You think this is about revenge? None of them spoke. Jason exhaled and then barked out a bitter laugh. You all think I'm still him, don't you? The angry kid in the helmet. The one you could control, shout down, ignore. The one you kept out of things because he didn't play nice. Cass spoke for the first time. You're angry. Jason blinked at her. She met his gaze without flinching. Still angry, she added. Even now. I'm human, Jason said quietly. But that doesn't mean I'm not capable of being professional. I'm doing my job. But you're you, Steph said, not unkindly. You have to know how it looks, the vendetta, the history. I am not the Red Hood anymore, Jason said, firmer now. I spent years working to become someone else, someone better. But that doesn't mean I forget. I'm not a robot. I don't switch it off. And if anything, that makes me more qualified, not less. Then he stepped forward again, voice low and hard. Let me tell you something. You've all done insane things. You dress in body armor and capes, stalk criminals through alleyways, and beat the shit out of them without trial. You dangle people off of rooftops to make them talk. You dodge cops like it's a sport. Hell, half of what you do wouldn't just get thrown out in court. It'd get you locked up. And me? Jason shrugged. I went to med school. I trained. I followed the rules. And yet, here I am. Still being treated like the family grenade waiting to go off. The room fell quiet again. Bruce rose slowly. You don't understand what he's capable of. What he'll do if he thinks the game has changed. Jason's patience then to a razor edge. And you don't understand what he'll keep doing if nothing changes. And then no one answered. When they stared at him like he was the one swinging crowbars and rigging amusement parks to blow, he finished it. Let me make one thing very clear. His voice is low, iron-edged. I didn't come back for some tearful reunion. I didn't come back to play nice and pretend the past didn't happen. I don't care if you disagree with me. Frankly, what you think is irrelevant. I came back because the victims of the Joker deserve more than what they've gotten. They deserve justice. They deserve justice. A trial. A chance to be seen. His eyes locked with Bruce's. You might think you're above the law. You might even act like you are. But that doesn't make it true. Not even for Batman. And with that, he turned and walked out. The photos of his past still scattered on the table behind him. Proof, perhaps, that Jason Todd was more than a ghost. And now, more than a bat. Alright guys, and that is the end of chapter 4 of Insane or Not Insane. That is the question by Alright, what's all this then? I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you next chapter.